Hello and welcome back to. Oh, sorry, hang on a second. One last thing. The buddy. That's better. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I'm your host, Annie Davis, and we are here for a Week 10 preview. So, apologies first of all for our lack of Week 9 review. Very busy week. I'm just about back from my time in Madrid. A very brief stay. But due to my busy schedule, I didn't get time to record a Week 9 review. So apologies, first of all, for all of you who were waiting that. But nevertheless, we are here. We're bouncing back with a Week 10 preview. And with me today, I've got a first timer on the podcast, making his debut on the show from the Irish NFL show. With me today is Shane Brennan. Shane, how are things?
It's great to be on. By the way, the only kind of takeaways that people might have missed from Week 9 is the fact that the Lions are the best team in football. I think we pretty much summed up Week 9 just there. And it's good to see you back from what seemed like a fantastic trip in Madrid. I know you were a Dolphins fan. It seems the Dolphins will probably be playing in that stadium next year. So I hope maybe you were kind of visualizing all of the teal and orange going around the stands there, because next year that should be something pretty incredible.
You know what? I actually did. I was sitting in the game yesterday. I was at Madrid 18 Milan yesterday. Literally a one day stay, and I did see what I think was the press area of Madrid, very similar to Tottenham in terms of that part of the stadium. So, yeah, I was thinking, hopefully this time next year, we'll be, sitting down in the press box, watching, hopefully, Dolphins play. Don't know who against yet. I've not worked it out yet, but it should be, hopefully. I think I'll try and go even as a fan, even if it is a Dolphins playing in Madrid. We are playing internationally anyway, so I'll be going to that regardless where it is. But I think if it's in Madrid, perfect 2-hour flight, very easy to get to. Literally as well, like it was so easy to get to. I mean, public transport was so easy to get from the airport in Madrid. First of all, 10-minute drive from the Atletico Stadium. If you want to do a stadium tour at their stadium, very easy to get to there. But you can literally get a metro from the Bernabeu to the airport. So literally you can do it in one day if needs be. Or if you want to go there, and I'm sure you and many boys from Ireland like Michael and Mark and everyone else who come for the day, Jimmy English as well, they can easily come from the day, I'm sure, as well in Madrid. So I think, for NFL fans, I think certainly the public transport is great. There's always metros everywhere, buses. It's really easy place to go around when it comes to public transport. So I think, if anyone who wants to go to the Madrid game next year, I think it was really, really comfortable, because I've been to some places where it's not been the case, but this was for me fantastic public transport.
Yeah, it does seem. I've never been to Madrid. I'm kind of saving for my big tour for when the game comes next year. But it does seem like, because the stadium is so central and it's very well connected, like it's a very easy place to get to. One of the things that always annoys me about the games at Wembley is it's very difficult to fly in and out of the same day, as opposed to the games at Tottenham. From our point of view, we can get the train back to Stansted. I was the same with Frankfurt last year. The Frankfurt Stadium is it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's on the train to the airport if you're flying internationally as well. So look, I know we're kind of, I feel like we're kind of some sort of NFL aristocrats talking about how to fly to different stadiums across Europe. But that's just the fantastic nature of covering the NFL in Europe. And of course, we have another game to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, and we will be there. Of course, that is one of the games we're going to preview. We are going to be there on behalf of the podcast. Looking forward to bringing you that. Also, I'm looking forward to Machine Gun Kelly. I'm quite a fan of his music. So I'm actually going to stay for the half-time. Yeah, it's I think it's because he sings "Country Road." This new song he's done, which is basically what they loved singing a couple of years ago, and they've done an NFL game since in London. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the halftime show this time, and yeah, it should be a great occasion. Looking forward to it, and just looking forward to what should be another great NFL week. Of course, me and you, Shane, we met for the first time in person in Dublin, but we got to know each other really well in London. Had some great times with you and Sky from the franchise tag, Freddie and Gareth and all the boys. And you are a newcomer on the podcast. You've not been on before. We like to ask all of our newcomers the same question, and I already know the answer because I've got to know you. But for the benefit of the audience, you are a Patriots fan. What made you a Patriots fan?
It's quite a simple one. I spent some time living in Massachusetts, which I always feel like I have to explain to people. As soon as you tell people you're a Patriots fan, people start assuming the worst in you. Oh, here's just another bandwagon. I can guarantee you're probably a United fan as well or something like that, which I'm not. I'm a Liverpool fan. But no, like I followed the league, I'd say, for about 3 or 4 years without having attach myself to a team, and then by the time that kind of second back to Super Bowls came for the Patriots, I'd started to build up my contracts where I was working in Massachusetts, and I spent a few summers there. And when I was in college, I was over and back a lot. I didn't live there solidly. I got to see very few games, but I love Boston, and New England is the favorite part of the world I've ever been to. I love the people there, and anything I feel like gives you a connection to that part of the world makes your life better. And that's why I'm a Patriots fan. It's as simple as that. I'm a Boston sports fan across all four American sports. Not that I know much about the other three, so that's it's very much a Boston thing for me. And I'm embracing the fact that now the Patriots are kind of crap. I feel like this is character building. I can earn the pain that, or the connection to a team that pain gives you, that a lot of other NFL fans have experienced in the 21st century that the Patriots haven't felt. So, and the pain, by the way, definitely exacerbated by the fact that when Drake May passed with that last minute touchdown on Saturday, I whacked my knee off the table. So that was a nice bit of physical pain to go there, as well as the emotional aspect of it too.
Well, it sounds like you both had some, let's say, aerated moments on Sunday. I mean, I was pulling my hair out watching the Dolphins play. When I saw, I know we haven't talked about it much because we didn't do a review of the game, and I was hoping to get David on, our fan from Buffalo, because he was, of course, at the game. But when you get in good position and Behemoth fumbles it again, and I'm thinking, like, you absolute plonker. I mean, it just seemed to be, it was in such a good position. We were doing so well in the run game. The plan was working perfectly. Run down the ball, it was working so well. Whether it's Mostert, A-Chain, it just worked incredibly well. And it just ultimately that fumble did ultimately change the game. And yeah, it's a shame because we were young dogs and we had such a bad season. But to have the chance, to come level in the last minute, and then Tyler Bass kicks a 61-yard field goal, easy for some to say, the longest in team history, when he's missed a chip shot field goal early in the game, which made the game competitive, was just awfully frustrating and gutting, really, because 2-6, there's been 3 teams in history that have done 2-6 and made the playoffs. I think most recently was, I believe it was the Bengals. I think it was the Jaguars in 2021, or whether they did, only made the playoffs and beat the Chargers. And it's not happened very often, and there's a reason for that. So, yeah, sadly, I think that's probably our playoff hopes over. But I think if we'd won there, it may have, it may have changed it completely. But moving on, though, to Week 10, starting off with 2 teams that certainly well in contention. Certainly Baltimore Ravens, who host the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football. This, of course, is 1:15 a.m. for those listening or watching in the UK. Shane, who wins this game, Baltimore or Cincinnati?
It's funny, on the podcast that I do, I pretty much backed Cincinnati to win every week. I seem to have this inflated confidence in Joe Burrow and inflated confidence in that offense to try and pull things off. And look, we saw 2 seasons ago that when the Bengals needed to come back after a slow start to the season and ended up winning, 10, 11 games in the tail end, being able to beat the Ravens was a key aspect to them being able to top the division that season. Now, the Ravens last year ended up topping that particular rivalry. I think it's going to be a very difficult one to call. Of course, the Thursday night aspect and the turnaround afterwards, definitely, I'm not quite sure what way that affects each team. We haven't seen each team being able to react to that kind of turnaround. But the Ravens have to be favorites coming into this, simply on form. If you look at Lamar Jackson, I think, is making better decisions in passing. He's attempting less passing, but everything he's throwing is accurate. And not only is it accurate, it's getting more and more efficient. You look at the pass he's throwing to Zay Flowers, for example, the amount of yards he's getting for that and the return he's getting from all of his passes is just getting better and better each week. I think both of these teams put up 41 points on Sunday just gone. I think the Ravens did so against a tougher defense in Denver than the Bengals did in against Las Vegas. So 41 points for me against Denver is worth more than 41 points against Las Vegas from my point of view. And I just think that the Ravens have also made a pretty key improvement in their defense. They traded for Tre'Davious White on the trade deadline day yesterday, who, as a cornerback, is trying to fix the one aspect of that team where they've fallen down. They are a great line of scrimmage team on both offense and defense. They're not a great pass protection team. They're not great at kind of picking balls out and trying to get interceptions. And of course, against Joe Burrow and that defense, that will be key. But I just don't see a situation where the Bengals can pass for 5 touchdowns because the run game isn't particularly strong. Whereas I can see a situation where the Ravens can score early and take control. And we know the Ravens have generally been susceptible to fourth quarter collapses. I think they're getting a little bit better at controlling that now. And against this divisional rival, they know how to unlock Joe Burrow early. So my pick is with the Ravens this week.
Well, me and you are on the same page. I've gone for the Ravens as well. I mean, it's the team with the most points scored per game against the team who's allowed the 6th most points per game. And looking further on as well, I mean, the Bengals defense has been, for me, really bad because Joe Burrow is having actually a really good season. But look at their losses. They lost now. They got the 26 points given up against the Chiefs, 38 against the Commanders, 24 against the Panthers when they won that game, 41 against the Ravens last time they played. You know, they gave away 37 against the Eagles and 24 against the Ravens. So this defense is leaky. And I think the Thursday night factor as well, the home team often wins because of a shorter week. And I think the Ravens, for me, they're my Super Bowl pick before the season started. It's not changed throughout these first 9 weeks. So I'm going to go for the Ravens and give them the win. But moving on, though, to our first game on Sunday, which is, of course, as we mentioned before, the game in Germany, just the second game in history in Germany, the fourth total in Germany, the second ever in Munich. 2 not very good teams. It's a handful of wins between them. And I think on the one hand, I think 2 bad teams can make it a great game because both teams won't be able to defend. But I also don't back the offense to score the points to even trouble the defense in the first place. So I can see it being low scoring. But I'm going to give the win. It's actually quite tough. Both teams showed a bit of fight last week. The Panthers, of course, got their win against the New Orleans Saints, and the Giants fell short against the Commanders. I'm going to go for the Giants, I think. I don't know why. And I think the Panthers, I don't think... can I see them winning 2 weeks in a row? Probably not. It's a coin flip between 2 bad teams. It really is.
Yeah, but I think people back the Giants because they know Giants have a good defense. Like, if you look at the 4 units that are going to be on field, there's one decent unit, and it's on the Giants side of the ball, with the Giants defense. I imagine that's probably why you're leaning that way, is it?
Potentially. I just have no faith in either team. I really don't. So it's interesting. I'll be honest. I'm just after coming off doing a podcast with a woman called Sheena Quick, who is a beat writer in Carolina. I was talking to her, and I think after talking to her, I'm feeling very positive about everything in Carolina because she was very upbeat about Bryce Young's performance in particular. Now, as we're sitting here, Dave Canales hasn't decided whether Bryce Young, or hasn't said anyway, whether Bryce Young will be the starting quarterback, but I think the decision is probably already made that Bryce Young will be starting here. And his personal confidence and his personal development, I think, is a lot better than it was in the first 2 weeks of the season before he got benched. So that's definitely worth looking at. But at the same time, the other side of my heart is thinking, there's an Irish fella on the Giants. Jude McAtamney is the kicker. He's a guy from Derry, made his debut on Sunday that all of us were delighted about. So I think maybe there's a bit of the look of the Irish that we're trying to hope for from the Giants' point of view. If I'm being honest, right, and I've backed the Giants a couple of times this season, and I think the Giants are a better team than their record suggests. The problem is they've got Daniel Jones playing as quarterback, and since Saquon Barkley left, they've lost any sense of X factor in their offense. So for that reason, I'm actually backing the Panthers because I think the Panthers will just have more confidence in whatever game plan they have. If they decided they're going to pass it deep most of the game, they're just going to do it. Why not? They're not going to. They don't feel under pressure. They're just going to throw it up there. They're going to put it deep. They're going to try and do some crazy things. I think it's going to be a much better spectacle than, for example, the Patriots versus the Colts in Frankfurt last year, which was a 10-6 scoreline. I think this will have more scores. I just think that there's a lot of situations when I was watching the Giants game last year or last week where there's composure being lost, or there's people yelling at each other. They were going for 2-point tries when they shouldn't be going for 2-point tries. And I'm just waiting for a stupid decision like that to come and undermine them again this week. So for that reason, I'm going for. Is it an upset if the Panthers win? Is any time the Panthers win an upset? I think it is. It probably is. I'm going for Carolina in this one. I think there'll be one man that's going to stand out in this game. I think it's Dexter Lawrence. He's got the second most sacks this season with 9. And I think that for a quarterback he won last week, but this Saints team has been struggling for a long time. They're really out of sorts. So I think it's hard to really gauge whether that was Bryce Young's performance, whether that was one that was, he's going to start playing better now, or whether it's just one simply, he looked better because he was playing against a bad team and a bad defense. So I think I'm going to hold my horses yet on Bryce Young, and I think that Dexter Lawrence could be player of the game. I think this game is crying out for a defensive player to be the star of the show. So I think this game for me, I back the Giants, but I will not be shocked at all if the Panthers win. I think both of these teams are bad teams. I wouldn't be surprised if these are the 2 worst teams come week 18 in terms of the draft. I think next year, I wouldn't be shocked if it's them and the Giants, battling out for that number 1 overall pick. Moving on to the first of the 6 p.m. slate, 1 p.m. if you are listening on the East Coast. It involves your team, Shane, as the New England Patriots take on the Chicago Bears. Got to be honest, Shane, I've gone for the Bears. I don't see any way the Patriots win this.
No, I mean, it's the smart money is on Chicago, and so is mine. Why would you back the Patriots to win any match? Like, they played against the Titans last week, and the Titans look good. If you make the Titans look good, you're not a good football team. It's as simple as that. So just for context, and the podcast I do, I've not been a fan of what the Titans have been able to do on field. Defense and Tony Pollard, yeah. The rest of the team, no. And I think the fact that the Patriots gave themselves a chance at the end because Drake May was able to throw that touchdown pass and had 11 seconds probably made or gave us a better feeling coming out of that match than the match actually deserved. When I was watching the game, there was very little. Like, it was a lot of punts going on in the first quarter and in overtime. The Patriots defense was very soft, to use that word that Gerard Mayer used in Wembley Stadium a couple of weeks ago. And the only hope for the Patriots is that somehow the Bears are still in some kind of tailspin, the hangover from the Hail Maryland and being pretty comprehensively beaten by the Cardinals Sunday that's gone. Do you expect the Bears to still not be fully confident in what they're able to do? But the fact is, they're just a better football team. Their defense is better. Caleb Williams is due a good game. They're at home. The only thing good about the Patriots is Drake May, and even he's making some decisions where I'm afraid that he is leaving himself open to injury. There's a couple of times, and you were there in watching the Dolphins game a couple of weeks ago when the Dolphins fans were all cheering when Tua slid instead of putting themselves open for injury. And I'm afraid that's going to be us in a couple of years as well. If you look at what Anthony Richardson has been doing, like, he's been opening himself up to being injured a lot. Drake May is doing that. And nobody's talking about it, but he's doing it a lot. He's going for runs, but he's going in head or shoulder first. There was a play in the fourth quarter before he made the game tying pass when he should have ran for the sideline to stop the clock, but he didn't. His instinct is just to run straight up the pitch. Kept the clock going, had himself open for an injury. And this is him after getting a head injury against the Jets the previous week, which put him out of the game. So, can the Bears contain him? Maybe get a couple of hits on him and slow him down a bit? Yeah. Is Caleb Williams going to have a good game this week? Yeah. Can the Patriots defense hold up to a good performing Caleb Williams? I don't think so. For that reason, I think I agree with you, Andy. The Bears are probably going to win this game.
Now, I have to ask you, you mentioned then about in London, of course, you were, like myself, there at the Patriots practice facility. And, I've not had the luxury yet of covering my own team at these events. I didn't quite get the creds when I went, when there was a Germany game last year, or I didn't even apply when we played against the Jags in 2021. So for you, I want to get your sort of opinion on what it's like to actually be there in amongst your team, the team you've loved for many years. I mean, I'm sure you came across very, very confident. I didn't see any sort of shyness or nerve, but, I bet inside you were thinking to yourself, come on, play it cool, play it nice and cool here, because, I think you could have easily, like anyone really, if your team, I'm sure if I was ever in the room with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, I may have easily just completely fumbled the bag and been so nervous and messed my questions up. Actually, people may have thought with Aaron Rodgers, but how was that for you, just in terms of covering your own team, watching them practice, being near the likes of Robert Kraft, and then even what we got facility-wise, viewing-wise, was better than I've ever had it anywhere else in London games. Being that close to the players, seeing like Austin Hooper throwing quarterback drills and catching balls in the end zone, KJ Osborne and other players doing these drills, Drake May throwing it. That must have been just, for you, an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I have to say, the way that the Patriots organized everything in London just gone was excellent. I've covered a couple of the games internationally, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have covered a lot more than I have, and they were very impressed by the way it was organized. So fair play to anybody who was involved in that aspect of it. That was the second time I've covered a Patriots game. I covered the Patriots game, the one I mentioned earlier in Frankfurt year beforehand. And that one, I was a little bit more nervous. I flew over to Sunday morning, and I stayed in the press conference afterwards, and I asked Bill Belichick a question. Now I'm a journalist by trade. I work for a newspaper / podcast now. Obviously I've been a big fan of Belichick, but this is Belichick when he was in a loss and in a tailspin. And that game was the game that we found it afterwards that Robert Kraft decided the Belichick era has to end. And being able to ask Bill Belichick a question was like, I was like, but I asked it pretty nicely. And actually I was quite proud. You know, the little NFL game previews that go on the following week, they use the answer to my question in that. I was the only one who managed to get a half decent answer out of him, which, to be fair, by Bill Belichick standards, a half decent answer is 10 words as opposed to 4 words. So that was nerve-wracking. So by the time I got to London, I was like, okay, not that I've done this before, but I was like, yeah, I felt kind of in the groove. I have a confidence because I know what I'm talking about, because I followed the Patriots. Whereas if I was doing the same following a team that if I was over in Germany right now and I was covering the Panthers, I'll be honest, I don't have the bank of knowledge where I would feel confident to ask questions, if you understand what I mean. You know, obviously you put in your research and you do as much as you can, and then when you're talking to other beat writers, for me, I compare myself to the level of knowledge. Whereas when you're around people from Boston, firstly, I'm used to people from Boston. I used to live there. And secondly, I'm a Patriots fan, so I know I'm confident enough that when I'm asking Hunter Henry a question, or when I'm comparing the aggression the Patriots offense have had versus previous weeks, I know what I'm talking, because I've watched it all and I've analyzed it all and I listened to it all and I read a lot of it. So in that aspect, it was a really enjoyable experience. And being in the room, by the way, when Gerard Mayo came out and said, completely unprovoked, by the way, nobody asked him a question. He was just, we are a soft football team. You could hear all the Boston media sitting in front of their seats ready to pounce like vultures on that. Because you have to remember, for 20 years, they're used to getting stonewalled, getting absolutely nothing from Belichick. And when Mayo comes out and says, we're a soft team, and then all the players come out and they're like, what do you make of that? He just called you soft. You know, it's like, it's that typical, hey, what are you going to do about it kind of thing, you know? So that was really good crack in comparison to the previous year when Belichick walked in. It was like when a headmaster walked into a rowdy classroom, everyone was just completely silent. That kind of, oh shit, he's here, once Belichick walked in. So the difference between seeing that two was kind of cool as well.
Yeah, it must have been amazing. I mean, I had the luxury of being in the same room as Jurgen Klopp. I did get to go through my time at Brighton Uni to a Brighton-Liverpool game in the press box, and got to go to Jurgen Klopp's post-match press conference. Got to be when all the journalists put your phone down by the manager. So I did that literally with him looking straight at me. So that was, my sort of nearest experience to that. But didn't ask a question. Only got 5 minutes. But it's just, for me, I can imagine if I would have, if I was a big fan of Brian Flores, still am since a coach, and I'm sure I'd have been very nervous if I was around him for those 2021 games. But yeah, that must have been just a fantastic experience. I'm hoping next year, if I don't go as a fan and I get to go as media, I'm hoping that will be, for me, a very similar experience. Moving on though to a team that caused me a lot of pain just last weekend, as the Buffalo Bills travelled to the Indianapolis Colts. Two teams that actually beaten us in recent weeks, 2 of the last 3 games. I think for me, it has to be the Bills. I don't think the Colts are that good of a team. I think they beat us, granted, and they've made some games close, but I think the Bills are just light years ahead of them. I think Josh Allen, for me, is easy an MVP candidate. I think he is, look at most valuable player, the meaning of that word. I think no one's more valuable to their team apart from Mahomes than Josh Allen. I think he completely runs the offense. And I think this Bills team, for me, I think you saw for many years, which is also in the AFC East, easy division. They're going to coast to this division title, and then they're going to go to the playoffs, probably almost having a week or two off, really. They'll probably rest a few players week 7. They say they could even win the division by Thanksgiving, which is crazy to me. That's how easy it's been from this year in the AFC. So they are, for me, despite maybe the limitations, I think that for me they are an AFC title contender. I think they are, and I think for me, I think they eased the victory here against a Colts team that has, really struggled, and for many years since Luck retired, to have this quarterback stability. I mean, Richardson was in there, now he's not. Flacco's in there, and I think the Vikings game was a weird game because there was that one period in the game where Flacco throws an interception. The very next play, Sam Darnold did the same thing, and I think there was a fumble from Jonathan Taylor. It just seems awfully clunky to me, and I just don't right now have the faith in the Colts, even though they're at home on a shorter week, or slightly shorter week, but a few hours difference. I have no faith in them to beat the Bills. I have no faith at all. And I think this is my lock of the week per se. I feel very cushy about this pick. I really do. I think it's really, really easy for me. Buffalo Bills win this. I don't think it's even close. Shane, same sentiment, or do you think
you're in your rocking chair for this one, is it? That's it. Let's go. Let's go Buffalo. Look, 2 reasons to be hopeful for the Colts if you are a Colts fan listening. Firstly, I think the Bills aren't fantastic at stopping the run game, as I think the Dolphins kind of exposed last week. And if Jonathan Taylor has a good game, the Colts might have a chance. Secondly, I think the Bills and a lot of people in our organization might have missed, not that they missed this game, but they're not thinking in terms of their season or in terms of bringing their best stuff about this game. They're thinking about next week having to play at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. And we've seen it happen a couple of times where when you're thinking so much about a big game next week, your sharpness is that little bit gone. But if I'm being honest, the Bills are going to win this game. I think it's a sign of a good team when you win games you probably shouldn't have won, as was the case for the Bills against the Dolphins. And I know that might break your heart.
Yeah.
And the period where the Bills might be complacent isn't yet until after they win the division, which is inevitable at this point. So, yeah, Josh Allen is excellent. Sure, he's thrown 2 interceptions the last 2 games after having thrown none in the first 8 weeks, but the interception he threw against the Dolphins, I'm not even sure if that was necessarily his fault. He's playing some pretty clean football. He's playing some pretty strong football. The offensive coordinator, I think, is starting to get a bit of consistency there, because I think we've seen this before at the start of the season where the Bills might come out with a great game one week and a not so great game the next week. So I think all things considered, the Bills are favorites here, and rightly so.
Yeah, and you mentioned that game next week. I mean, we're doing our Week 11 preview next week. What a week this is going to be. We've got Commanders Eagles on Thursday night, and then on Sunday we've got the likes of Ravens at Steelers, Falcons at Broncos, Seahawks at Niners, before we then got Chiefs at Bills. Then we've got on Monday Night Football, we've got Texans against the Cowboys. This is going to be shaping up to be a hell of a week, and I think this could be, at this point of the year, a very crucial part of the season and a very crucial week in the NFL. Moving on, though, to our next game, we mentioned the Chiefs then. They are hosting the Denver Broncos. Now, Denver Broncos, fun fact for you all, they are a team that's beaten Mahomes the most times. Josh Allen's the quarterback who's beaten him the most times, but Denver Broncos is a team that's beaten him the most times in his career, largely played due to that one game he had in Week 18 or Week 17 in his first year as a rookie. So I think the Broncos, they've, even though not many have beaten the Chiefs, the Broncos have done. So I think they'll feel confident of a win, especially with their defense, which has been one of the stars of the show. And Bo Nix has been brilliant. I think there was that pass he made where, a Cortland Sutton made where he caught it, where they've been, it's been a good defensive showing from the Broncos. I mean, they've, had a very good season in terms of that. But I think the Chiefs, they had their troubles on Monday Night Football against the Buccaneers, took it to overtime. Mahomes throwing his first ever touchdown in the fourth quarter to tie a game, which is crazy thinking it's his 6th or 7th year in the NFL. I don't think they'll go the whole year unbeaten. I think they will lose. I think the Bills game could be that game, considering how well the Bills do against them in the regular season. But I just think right now the Chiefs will still stay unbeaten. They'll keep rolling, and I think the Chiefs will move to 9-0 with a win against their division rivals, the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering. I think the Broncos beat the Chiefs in Denver last year, and that was the first time they'd beaten them in 10 games, I think, or something like that. The
That's
Chiefs had
fine.
gone on a pretty strong run. I think it was, other than the Patriots over the Jets, I think it was the longest divisional streak or something like that. At some point last year, somebody has to beat this Chiefs team. Come on, guys! Like, this is, so many of these games have gotten so close, but they managed to come out on the right side of them. But if I'm being honest, if I just look at the Chiefs, the fact that they've added DeAndre Hopkins, they're coming up against the Broncos team who, yes, have a kind of a Wimbledon crazy gang defense, as I like to call them. But, you know, unless that ankle injury that Mahomes semi picked up or kind of got hit with against the Buccaneers on Monday night has a bigger effect on him than we think, then the Chiefs should come out of this pretty unscathed. The fact that it's at home, it's against a team which they have generally a pretty good record against in recent years. They've added an extra couple of pieces to their squad, which is giving a bit of momentum. And as much as Sean Payton might have a great game plan for them, I'm actually thinking more that if the Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs this year, it's going to be in Denver, not in Kansas City. So I'm going for the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I think even if Mahomes' injury, is bad, I mean, there's been a bit of an update, I think, in recent times, about I believe it was the ankle that he broke, and I think I don't see him not playing. I think he'll play on the game. I think whether we may see a game where he maybe is limited in his throws, they might do a game where they run the ball heavily. I mean, I think with Kareem Hunt, Smargy P. Ryan, I think they did their bits last week, and I think Kareem Hunt got a few touchdowns, got one against the Buccaneers. I think that could be how they run it. I think the Broncos. I think this game's for taking. I think this could be the upset of the week, but I think the Chiefs still roll, and I think that it's I don't think this is the week where it ends. I think you got to look at the potential Steelers in a few weeks, but I think certainly the Bills game probably presents their biggest chance of losing. Moving on though to the next game, which is going to be Falcons taking on the Saints in New Orleans. Friend of the show, Jay Lawrence, is going to be there. Quite a few actually people from the NFL world that could be there that we know. I think Michael McQuaid and Mark Hogan are going to be there from the Pro Football Island. I think Cam Hogwood, friend of the show, he is going to be there as well. And I think, it's quite a few of the UK contingent that are going to be at this game. And I think for what should be, a convincing Falcons win.
Very convincing Falcons win. The New Orleans Saints, if you look at what they've put on the field the last couple of weeks, there's no reason to feel to give you confidence they can be anywhere near as good as they were in the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks seem to be some of the weirdest outlier games in NFL history, how well they played. And look, the Falcons are on a pretty good roll at the moment. The fact that they are sitting at 6-3, they've won the last couple of games. I know some of the performance recently you could put down to the Kirktober phenomenon. That is usually kind of slides off a little bit the further we get into November. But where are you expecting the Saints defense to stop Drake London or Bijan Robinson or Kirk Cousins or that offensive line? You're not. And this is going to be, and look, Saints Falcons are a big rivalry. When you see big rivalries like this, you can get surprises. People get G'd up. The crowd becomes electric, as it will be in the Superdome. But you can't look at the quality of the Saints and how they've played for the last 6 games and think, yep, I'm going to give them a good chance of beating the Falcons, because they don't. They just don't.
It's amazing that they've gone from being, after week 2, people were thinking they could be a dark horse to win the Super Bowl, to a team that could generally be number 1 overall pick in 2025. It's just 2 wins so far. They haven't won a game since week 2. It's been horrendous. And, I think this Falcons team for me has been really impressive. And I think there's no way I don't think the Saints win this game. I mean, the NFL, we love the NFL for what it is. Anyone could be anyone. It's a sport where literally any given Sunday, to pardon the pun, it is literally just, you can't predict any at all who's going to win a game. But I don't see any way that this Saints team win against the Falcons. Moving on to the next game, which is our Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the San Francisco 49ers. This is actually a really good game. 49ers off a bye week, so I'm going to give them the edge for that reason. I think if this was a sort of both teams had played the previous week, I have more faith in the Buccaneers winning this game. I just think that the Niners, despite their problems, I can see them just bouncing back. They got their win last time to bounce back, and I think give them a week off to rest and recuperate. I do think that this is their time to push on towards the end of the season down the stretch, and I think it starts here with a win against Buccaneers. Shane, who wins, Bucs or Niners?
Yeah, I'm looking back at this, and I think, well, the Buccaneers, I think people talked about them quite big at the start of the season, and people have been talking about the quality, but we forget that they've lost 4 of the last 5 games. They lost against the Falcons in overtime, beat the Saints, lost against the Ravens, lost against the Falcons, lost in overtime against the Chiefs. Now, being able to push the Chiefs to overtime in prime time in Arrowhead isn't the most shameful way to lose a game, but you have to look at the fact that they just have very pronounced struggles in running the ball. They couldn't run for over 100 yards in Arrowhead. They've struggled in running the ball in previous weeks. They're relying a lot on Baker Mayfield to do most of the heavy lifting. And if he doesn't pass for 300 yards in a game, are you going to win? Probably not. And in the last couple of games, I think he's been a bit slow. And against the San Francisco team, which, as you said, is coming off a bye, has a lot of quality, and is really under pressure now to try and get some wins, because the NFC has been taken over by a couple of teams in the north, effectively, or a couple of teams in the east. The NFC West is not sealed up at all because they've lost a few games. They're sitting at 4-4. They need to get a roll on. They need to get a roll on now. And Kyle Shanahan in particular needs to get a roll on now. So surely with the extra week off, he's really eyed this game up as being a game which he's going to bring out some of his best stuff so they can really press on. So for that reason, I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to come out big enough victors here. I nearly say this is my rocket share game of the week. If you're going to look for a game where a team's going to win by 14 points or more, I think this is the game to look at.
Interesting. I think it could be a lot closer. I think it could be a field goal wins it. I think when you get Baker rocking, I think there's not, for me personally, many better experiences in football than watching him at his best. But I think the loss of Godwin, I think, is proven to be a bit of a factor at the moment, and I think it will prove to be a factor, I think, for their playoff hopes. But I think he'll make a good game regardless, and I think this could be an absolute cracker. So our next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Washington Commanders, and I think the Steelers, or both teams, have had great seasons, better than anyone expected, and I think I think they'll fancy their chances in Washington to get the win here. They'll probably think we're on to a winner here because they've been excellent in the run game since stopping the run with Austin Eckler. They've the 4th best run defense in the league, but at the same time, their pass defense is middle of the road. And I think that when it comes to Jaden Daniels, I think that he's going to cause some problems. I think if you get TJ Watt coming at him, I think he can escape the pressure very easily. And I think the Commanders will keep it rolling. I mean, their momentum now is incredible. I mean, they've only lost 2 games the entire season, and they just right now are showing no signs of that ending. And I think whilst the Steelers, they're good defense, and even the offense has been good, I think the Commanders keep rolling, and I think they get the win here. Shane, who wins out of this for you?
I think out of all the games this week, this is for me the toughest to call. Firstly, we forget that the Steelers are kind of sitting at 6-2. Maybe we forget that because they were on a bye last week and we didn't see them play and people aren't talking about it recently. But I think because the talker in the Steelers is that, well, a lot of people look at them and think, yeah, we can beat them. But the Steelers keep finding ways to win. The losses they got were 3 points against Dallas and 3 points against Indianapolis. Now, in fairness, the game in Indianapolis, they were reliant on a late game comeback. Indy had control of the game, and then Anthony Richardson came out, and that was the kind of one outlier there. When I look at Jaden Daniels and his ability to extend plays, and that's the big thing here. When you're facing against a defense that is very, you mentioned TJ Watt, is very much about getting pressure on the quarterback and learning ways to contain. They're not trying to pick you off, they're trying to hunt you down. And Jaden Daniels is actually a pretty strong performer in that situation. We saw it against how much he was able to extend the play in the Hare, Maryland, against the Commanders, against the Chicago a couple of weeks ago. We've seen it in a lot of his play as well. And this is, remember, by the way, a Jaden Daniels with a rib injury, pulling out some of the most amazing deep passes you've seen in the last 2 weeks against Chicago and New York. So I find it very difficult to back against Jaden Daniels right now. And I think the Steelers are a team who are worse than their 6-2 record. But the Steelers have proven me wrong time and time and time again when I've backed against them in situations like this. I'm going to say the Commanders, but I really wouldn't, not saying that with a whole lot of confidence. Pittsburgh are definitely good enough to go in and take control of this game early. But the key thing is, though, the Steelers kind of need to have a lead early on for them to keep control. If you let Washington take command early on, the Steelers aren't a great team to chase them. They're not a team to chase you late on. They're not a late comeback team. They're a get ahead and lock it down early team. So if you're watching this, first score wins. Not quite, but first, whoever gets the first touchdown or if someone gets a 10-point lead by halftime, that might be good enough, because if the Steelers are ahead, they'll lock it down. If they're behind, I don't trust them to chase up for it. But I think on balance, I'm going to give it to the Commanders.
Okay, so our next game we're going to go into is the last of our 6 p.m. slate. Jacksonville hosting the Vikings. Now, it's amazing that, the first 5 weeks of the year they went 5-0. Only bet on them winning once out of those 5 games. But now I've started to, last 2 games, I bet on them winning the games. They've lost both. So for me, on paper, this should be a Vikings win. But you just don't know that they got the win last time out against the Colts. But that wasn't a pretty win. I mean, you think about the Darnold performance was not great. I know he got the touchdown that won the game, but there were a lot of mistakes in that game from him. And I think that, look at the bye week they had. A lot of teams, they need a bye week to recuperate. They use it a lot of time at a good time of the year to then go on and win Super Bowls as that little bit of a rest. But the Vikings seem to have their momentum and rhythm completely halted by the bye week. They've come back from London, a completely different team. They haven't been at all the same team that we saw in certainly the first 4 weeks. In London, they're a bit shaky, but they got the win. But yeah, I fear we're seeing Sam Darnold go back to the old Darnold we saw maybe with the Jets. Not as bad as that, because he's actually managed to get wins done. Got the all-important touchdown pass against the Colts when it mattered. But yeah, there's been some shaky parts of that offense. But Shane, we'll go to you first. Who wins for you?
It's an interesting point you made about Darnold. Most of the talk I've heard about him, even from people from Minnesota, are kind of suggesting that he hit his ceiling already, and now he's starting to regress a little bit. So you're looking for what Kevin O'Connell can do. Can he find some way to put some spark back into it? The fact that they won last week in prime time against Indianapolis will help them, of course. But nothing happened in the first half. You can't sit in confidence and say, yeah, that's one of the best teams in the NFC right now, which according to the record they are. But according to the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The game in London was when they're starting to slow down, and the bye week has completely killed any momentum they built up from the undefeated start of the season. The Vikings team we see now are very different to the Vikings team we saw host the Houston Texans in, week 4, week 5, somewhere around then. The problem is, though, they're facing against a Jags team who, I think, for a lot of their games, we saw it up until the Eagles gave them a pathway back into the game last week. I think too many Jags players are not playing for their coach. And you put that up against a Brian Flores defense. Do you really think that an offense with running backs with injury problems, Tank Bigsby, I think, ended up playing last week, even though he probably shouldn't have. Same with the other running back for Jacksonville, whose name escapes me. The offensive line there. Do you think against a Brian Flores defense that they have the mental capacity to play from start to finish, protect Trevor Lawrence, and be physical enough to get the win? I don't think so. So I'm not backing the Vikings offense here. I am backing the Vikings defense. I think they'll come away with a victory here.
Yeah, I agree. I've got the Vikings winning. I don't see any way the Jags win this game. I think this, with how the Vikings have been, as I said before, I think the Jags could capitalize on that, but they've got to be perfect. They've got to, if Darnold throws a pick, they've got to score from that play, be good on defense. But I just don't think, that's happening in either facet, whether it's their offense or defense. So I think the Vikings win this game by about 10 points. Our next game is the first lot of our latest slate as the Chargers host Tennessee Titans. Now, Shane, you may have given an insight on who you think is going to win this game based on your thoughts on the Titans earlier, but who wins this game for you?
Who wins it? Who loses it? Who's going to lose this game quicker? The Titans, they're going to find some way to throw the ball away. Look, it's interesting actually seeing the difference in the Chargers since Brandon Staley left. They are now either the top or definitely one of the top 5 defenses in the league after being lumbering somewhere in the 20s the last 4 or 5 seasons. Now that Jim Harbaugh is in, they're one of the best defenses in the league. You look at the scorelines they've managed to hold teams to. 10 points against the Browns, okay, not particularly difficult. 8 points against the Saints, not particularly difficult. The Chiefs only scored 17. Now, in fairness, the Chiefs won that match. Still, defense is playing pretty strong against Tennessee offense, who have Tony Pollard, and that's about it. You know, the Patriots defense, I think, made Tennessee look better than they were on Sunday. And you look what the Chargers have, you know, defensively, it's going to be locked on. Is this going to be a particularly high-scoring game? I don't think so. It's just going to be a game everyone's going to be sort of sitting on the edge of the seats trying and see what kind of result comes out of it. I'm not sure. The Chargers are 5-3. They know at 6-3 will give them a really good chance to push on for a wildcard spot because we know that they're not going to win the division with the Chiefs being in it. But this is the time now for the Chargers to prove that they can beat the teams that they should be beating and prove that they are as good as a team that everyone thinks they have been for the last couple of years. And I think they will. They're coming into this as 7-point favorites, and I think that's about right. They're going to win this game by about 7 points, maybe like a 17-10 scoreline. I'm not expecting too many. I'm not expecting the kind of an old Western shootout out in Los Angeles, but you know the defense that the Chargers have facing up against the offense the Titans have, that's a huge mismatch. The Titans are going to find it very difficult to score here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a horror show for the Titans. I mean, they've got, you know, the second worst passing offense in the league when it comes to yards per game. Looking at the rushing yards as well, it's not really being that much of a problem for them. You know, Pollard's been one of the shining lights, but you look about the Chargers as well. I mean, they've allowed the least points in the league this season in total. They're top 7 in terms of pass defense, top 8 when it comes to run defense. You know, they're top 10 in both categories. And I love as well in their offense. I love how they're spreading the ball out a lot. I mean, you've got Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson, Lab McConkey, just Herbert's nicely spreading out the ball, and you've got J.K. Dobbins to hand the ball off to if all else fails. So I'm liking this offense. They've got no real stars apart from Herbert, but they're just, I think with the O-line there, I think the addition of Joe Alt has been massive for them. I think they look, I hope he's got more time in the pocket, first of all, is allowing him to spread the ball out, like I said before. And I think overall, yeah, it's just a really good offense. You know, it's I've mentioned this analogy before, but you think about the Detroit Pistons when they won the NBA championship back in 2004. It was all allegedly all a bunch of no names, no real stars, just 5 just very good functional NBA players. And I think this is what we're seeing with the Chargers. Not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl, but I think certainly in terms of playoff caliber team, I think they certainly are there. Jim Harbaugh's got this team really nicely coached on both assets of the ball. And I think, yeah, this Chargers team will win this game, I think, fairly easy against the Titans. I think Pollard will be, get a couple of touchdowns here and there. Maybe you get one from the likes of maybe Westbrook Ikini. You might get one. But I think overall, this Titans team is not good. And I think they're poised for a top 5 draft pick next year. And I think this is not a good team whatsoever. Now, tasty game coming up next is the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Shane, Eagles or Cowboys?
Eagles by a mile. Eagles by an absolute mile, and for a couple of reasons. The Cowboys haven't won a game at home this season, which is just shock. If you think about it, if you think how well they've played at home the last couple of years. And I think that their home form is starting to completely collapse. Secondly, the Eagles are playing away from home, which means there aren't going to be a stadium full of Eagles fans booing Nick Sirianni, which gives them a bit more room to play around with. Thirdly, Saquon Barkley is awesome. He is absolutely awesome. And Jalen Hurts is improving in his game, not only in terms of the way he uses the offense, but he's seen the middle of the field. He's not a checked out merchant. We were talking earlier about the way that some teams, I think you were, some teams seem to check down the ball a lot or play a lot of screen passes and screenplays. The Eagles aren't doing that now. The Eagles are finding their wide receivers. Most of the passes that Jalen Hurts are throwing goes past the line of scrimmage. He's looking forward. They're pressing forward. They're looking pretty well. It's Nick Sirianni's decision making is the weak part of the weakness of this team. But they're facing against a Cowboys team who have no Dak Prescott. Should have really had more moves in the offseason. Are looking leaderless in the locker room. Are looking I'm not quite sure. Like, I don't believe in their coaching. I don't believe that their home advantage is going to hold up in a massive divisional game. And as impressed as I was with the backup, whose name escapes me now, who played against the Falcons the other day.
Cooper Rush, is it?
Yeah, Cooper Rush. Yeah, I was actually impressed by him, and he managed to bring the team back, and he made the Cowboys look like they had a fighting chance. But nah, the Eagles are too strong, and the fact that the Eagles are relying less on the brotherly shove or the tush push or whatever you want to call it is forcing them to actually use the offensive talent that they have instead of constantly seeing every set of downs as being 4 downs, which is forcing Jalen Hurts to actually be more aggressive, and it's working. And they're getting good return off. I mean, they if only they had not gone for 2-point conversions and kicked points and not given Jacksonville the mental route back into the game last week, they would have locked it down pretty easily. And they're after coming off 3 wins in a row. So the Eagles are a much better team here. They're coming in with great form. The Cowboys' home form isn't going to change with Dak Prescott on the bench. So, yeah, Eagles for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Cowboys have been god awful this year. The run game has been atrocious, and that's been a real disappointing part of the season for them. And I don't know whether you saw Dak Prescott on the sideline.
We suck. We suck.
It was easy as lip read in the world I've ever seen. It was so easy to know what he's saying, and it's true. They do suck. It's I think they can still make us potentially a wild card team, but they've got to bump their ideas up soon because otherwise, they're just going to be out the playoffs, and I think Jerry Jones will have to make some decisions in the off season, and I think McCarthy, you'd think, would be fired there. Jason Garrett held on to his job for a long time. I mean, you think about Dak Prescott, how lucky he's been that he's been coached by Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy. He's not actually had a good coach yet. So, I feel a bit bad in that sense.
I find it difficult to believe that Jerry Jones will let the opportunity to hire Bill Belichick pass by, even though the person he should be chasing up is the Lions offensive coordinator. He is going to be the hottest head coach in the offseason going. But you can guarantee that Jerry Jones will want to buy or bring in a kind of militaristic Bill Parcells type figure. And Belichick is there. All he needs to do is buy a gaff, and that's it. He's in. So, look, that's a conversation for a different day, but I think that's where the Cowboys are headed.
And our final game of the late slate before Sunday Night Football is in Arizona as the Cardinals host the New York Jets. This one's interesting because the Jets did get a great win against the Texans. I was really impressed with that. But I do feel as well that, for me personally, it was more the Texans losing that game more than the Jets winning it. I know you have a lot that you can put down to the Garrett Wilson catch, which was an amazing play. I mean, that and the Barkley play was in the same week. I mean, that was a great week for NFL players. But I don't think the Jets have been that good. And I think that they may have got the win, but I think they made the most of a Texans team that has got injuries, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins. And I think this Cardinals team is hot. I mean, I saw them in person beating my Dolphins. They got the convincing win against the Bears the following week, last weekend. So I think that they're rolling right now. Same with the Commanders. I think they're rolling. And I think that, I think the Cardinals will win this. I think maybe even like 12 points. I think the Cardinals team is finding their groove, and I think they get the win at home as well against the Jets.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this Cardinals team. I think they've got great fight. I was a big fan of them last season as well. I thought they showed a lot of grit, considering they were still waiting for Kyler Murray to get back, and a lot of people were expecting them to just kind of sit back and fold up, and that's exactly what didn't happen. And I think they're a very strong team, and it's very difficult for anybody to come against them. And look, the Jets beat the Texans because the Jets have last time out, because the Jets have a greater experience playing on Thursday night, having done so already this season against the Texans team who didn't play in any primetime games at all last year. All of their games were Sunday 1:00. And I think that lived experience of the Sunday to Thursday turnaround is what gave the Jets an edge. And the fact that the Jets are coming in with a bit of extra rest might give them an edge here. The big thing is can the Jets stop the Cardinals' run game? James Conner is starting to find a bit of consistency, being able to run for a few games for over 100 yards, and I'm expecting him to do so again. Match it up with Kyler Murray's dual threat ability, and just the fact that the Cardinals, I think, have a confidence in themselves to win tight games. They've done so a couple of times already this season, come back against the Niners, come back against the Dolphins, and I think it was a 2-point win against the Chargers as well. They know how to win close games, and they're coming off after a very strong performance against Chicago at home against a Jets team who are still leaderless, still not quite sure what their coach situation is. They've had a bit of time to wrap it around, and maybe this is my AFC East bias coming in, but I just don't see, once things start going wrong with that Jet squad, who is going to be the real leader to rally around. You can say, okay, I trust you, I like you, I believe in you, and I know you believe in us. Because it ain't Aaron Rodgers. It just isn't. He's too busy putting people he doesn't like onto his island. So, look, yeah, Cardinals for me here. I think it's simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, it's the Detroit Lions taking on the Houston Texans. In Houston, I mean, this Lions team, we'll go to you first. We'll go to you first, Shane. Who wins this game for you?
This is the Super Bowl everybody wants, isn't it? This is the Super Bowl we all want. Lions, Texans. Please, God, give us something we all want to see. Excuse me. I don't think the Super Bowl is going to happen mainly because I think the Texans have found it very difficult to take control of games. They've only played one game this year where they've taken control and shown that they are able to beat teams in the way the champions can beat teams, and that was against the Patriots on Drake May's first start when they got a lead pretty early on. Ended up, I think, it was a 41-21 victory, somewhere in that ballpark. They've proven time and time again that actually they're probably not as good as we think they are. They're talented, but they're not experienced enough. They're playing against a Lions team who are just absolutely awesome. The play decision in the second quarter on fourth down with only maybe a yard to go, but they were still in the red zone, to instead of trying to push it and get the extra downs, to just go for it and throw a touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who turned up wearing a Green Bay Sucks hoodie and then did that big celebration afterwards. That's aura. That's confidence. And I've been critical of Dan Campbell before. I think some of his decision-making is a risk to Detroit's ability to take control of close games, as was the case in the NFC Championship last year, as was the case against the Cowboys last year. I think they've got it sorted, man. I do not see anybody beating this Lions team at the moment. They are coming in with such confidence, such bravado, such talent. They lost Aiden Hutchinson, hasn't bothered them a single bit. They made a couple of trades to fill in the slots they needed. You know, the Lions are the best team in football. I said it at the top of the show. And as good as Houston are, they ain't stopping the Lions. I don't think anybody's stopping the Lions at the moment. The Chiefs probably can't stop the Lions, as good as Spagnuolo's defense is. The way the Lions are playing at the moment, things might change by the time we get to the playoffs. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I want to see greater fight back from Stroud. I want to see him look at the challenge ahead of him and say, I'm going to try and take control of this game. But I just don't see it happening. Jared Goff is playing too good football. The running, Sonic and Knuckles are playing too good. St. Brown is playing too good. The Detroit defense is playing too good. They're just unbelievable. And in situational football, they are making the right decision more often than not. And that's a big, big thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, this Lions team, they're 7-1. That's the first time, I believe that's in 68 years, which is, if my maths is right, that's during the war. But I can't be sure whether that's definitely the case. But either way, this team is really good. I mean, you think about some teams where, you've got a good receiving core, but the run game lets you down. Or your offense is good, but the defense has let you down. Shout out to the Bengals this season. But I think the Lions have got everything. They got an amazing run game. The O-line is incredible. The receivers are great. The quarterback's playing efficient football. I mean, he had, again, something like 11 from 11 at one point. I think he was his fourth game this season alone where he's had 10 consecutive completed passes. Jared Goff is playing, talk about MVP candidates. He's got to be a dark horse for this. I don't think he's getting the numbers or the the fancy plays that maybe other quarterbacks are getting. But I think, and he's not maybe a sexy name, but Jared Goff is playing an amazing football. And then you've got the defense. Actually, exactly what you said. They've lost arguably top 5 defensive player in the whole league. And it's been fine. I mean, they could have gone for Max Crosby, but they've not gone for that. But this is the team that I think that right now it's their window. I think right now, I think on their day they beat anyone, but they haven't yet played in the Super Bowl, and I think that pressure could get to them. They almost, they almost made it last year. They should have really made the Super Bowl last year. So I think that might be on their minds. We'll know as Liverpool fans, you don't win the league despite 97 points. What happens next year? Go on and win the whole thing and dominate it. I think the Lions maybe have got that mentality where we're going to learn from that mistake, learn from that game, and go one better. And I think the Lions, for me, are the best team in the NFC. On pound for pound, best team in the entire league. And I think, this team for me is fantastic. And I think there's absolutely no way, maybe not no way, but I think the Lions convincingly win this game for me, because the Texans have lost, their 3 best receivers. The kicking let them down, or even though Fairbairn's been amazing this season. I just think that, for me personally, the Lions win this with some reason. I don't see any way that the Lions don't win this game. I think they could, but I just don't think it happens, personally. Moving on to Monday Night Football, which involves my team, the Dolphins, as we travel to LA to take on the LA Rams. Hard one to call, because I think the run game's been our clear pan last few weeks. It's been a great feature of our game, whether it's Mostert, A-Chain, or Jalen Wright. But this Rams team's been pretty good against the run this year. Jared Verts has been excellent as a rookie. So it's tough. It is tough because Rams have gotten back some form to their best. And I think Dolphins haven't been great, and they've made a lot of individual mistakes. And I think for that reason, hate to say it, I'm going to go for the Rams. I love to sit here and say, support my boys, go for my team and be a fan. But I think with how Rams have played the last couple of weeks on offense, particularly, I think our defense could struggle. Made a lot of individual mistakes against the Bills, Ciran Neal and Jordan Poyer especially. And I think this defense will hold up against our run game. And I think the passing, Tua has only been back 2 games. Maybe the 3rd game he might go into his groove. And I think we showed a lot of improvement in the passing game, whether it's Tyreek Hill, that amazing catch he made, getting his both feet in bounds, or whether it's Jalen Waddle. I believe it was his first catch of the whole game, getting that touchdown to make it 27-all against Bills. So, I can see us winning it, but I'm going to give the edge to the Rams. Shane, what about you?
Firstly, I'm glad you shout out Liverpool in the Lions preview. It's nice to always get a shoehorn in there. Also, it's quite funny how we're both sitting here and predicting both of our teams will lose. So just the negativity of being an AFC East fan. Even when you're playing well or when you have a good team, you predict you'll lose. Unless you're a Jets fan, you probably think your team is the best in the world, even more than not. Sorry. I look at the betting lines and stuff like that, and the fact that the Rams coming into this as 1-point favorites. It's quite clear that this is going to be close. I think a lot of people are expecting to be close. And if you look at the talent that both squads have, the fact that they're coming this on an extra day of rest, I don't think that the traveling over to LA will put Miami off. In particular, Miami came off. My problem with Miami is that they played their most complete game of the season last week, but still found ways to lose. And there's been so many situations across the season when, and by the way, I backed Miami to top the division this year. I put my credibility on the line, backing the talent that Miami have, backing Mike McDaniel in particular, who I think when I had you on our podcast early in the season, is someone I said I'm a fan of. I'm not now. And I'm not a fan of a lot of aspects of the Dolphins team, because they just find ways to lose control in games they should be winning. Turnovers, senseless penalties, a lack of focus. We saw that big hit by Poyer at the end of the Bills game, which gave the Bills a chance to kick the field goal. It's just little things like that which you don't see happen with the Rams. And the Rams, the fact that they've Coop and Nakua back in there, I think Stafford is probably starting to play well. We've seen before with the Rams that the further they get into the season, the better they generally play. And again, the Rams are a team who have confidence in themselves, a bit like the Cardinals have. They have confidence in themselves that if it's close, that they will find a way to win it. I don't have confidence in the Dolphins that if it's close, that they'll find a way to win it. If anything, I have confidence that if it's close, they'll find a way to lose it. It wouldn't shock me if the Rams win by a field goal. even if it's a 1-point win. But that's what this really feels like. I think this is going to be close. I think the Dolphins might come out well in the start. The further we get into the game, the Rams might build into it. A 21-20 victory really is quite possible here, and it wouldn't shock me at all. So I'm afraid to say it, and I know you're a big fan of the guys in Miami, but the Rams are looking upwards. They're chasing the top of the division. They know how to win close games. Miami aren't any of that. As good as Tua is, and the fact that he's back with every week, he will get stronger, and that Miami offense will get stronger. It's just management of key moments is the problem for Miami, and that's why I think Los Angeles will win.
I think that's been a problem for years. I mean, a lot of times over years, even in the last couple of years where we've won games, that giving up the big plays has been a problem for years. I mean, the amount of times I'm seeing our corners being done like a couple of kippers, being torched in the secondary, it's just horrendous. And I think this season we won 2 games. Both those games we could have easily lost against the Jags and Patriots. But on the flip side, we should have won a game in Arizona. We shouldn't have beaten the Colts, and we should have beaten the Bills. Well, maybe not the Bills, but we could have easily done that. And I think, yeah, it's just been. I've said before that I've had seasons before. I've been a fan for 14 years. Most years I've gone into being a fan, I've expected to have a bad season. I think about 2019 especially, I knew it'd be a bad season. Whereas this is one season where we've done bad, where actually I had a lot of expectation. I thought we'd win the division like you. I thought that we'd make the divisional round, win a playoff game, end that streak. But it's been completely underwhelming for me, really underwhelming season. Yeah. And we had a 1-6 start a few years ago with Flores, but then we came back and managed to make it, I think, a 9-8 record. And I don't see that happening this time around. But I've seen improvements. I think if Tua hadn't got injured, I think maybe it would be a better situation. I think that Seahawks game, especially if that was Tua, even though I'm not his biggest fan, I think we look a far more better offense when he's there. Hill and Waddle getting more involved when he's there. So I think if the injury hadn't happened, he was playing bad, granted, before the injury, but I do think we maybe would have beaten someone, maybe beaten the Colts or beaten the Seahawks along the way. But yeah, it's just sadly one of those seasons. I think we all have to
I'll just make a very quick point on the Dolphins. I know this is home territory for you. The moment I lost confidence in the Dolphins was on Thursday Night Football, when I watched them play, and the snaps being handed to Tua were awful. And it's when you get little things like that, the attention to detail is missing on snapping the ball, that slows you down by a second or two, and that you don't see wide receivers react to that. That doesn't happen to the Chiefs. It doesn't happen to the Bills. It didn't happen to the good Patriots teams. It's such a small thing. It's the kind of thing you don't get stats about. It's the kind of thing which isn't talked about on Pat McAfee or anything like that, right? But to me, those are the signals that the attention to detail needed to turn a good team into a great team wasn't there this season. And I was very disappointed in them because I as much as AFC East rivalries are a big thing, between the Dolphins and the Bills, I wanted to see the Dolphins win this division this year, and it didn't happen. So look, we'll see how the rest of the year gets on. This could be a victory after sitting at 3 wins and looking at trying to make the wild card spot in the AFC. It's not impossible, but it's tremendously difficult from here on in.
Yeah, and the worst thing is that our hardest schedule is actually down the stretch. I mean, we got sort of the Niners, the Packers. We got to play the Jets twice. I know they've been bad, but I think they could find.
If you play the Patriots at some point, that'd be a nice handy one. Be grand.
Yeah, but right now I think we almost lost the game last time against the Patriots. So my faith is in there, but I do think as well get a couple of wins. I think if we can beat the Packers in Thanksgiving, I think that could be one that it turns our season around. If we can beat the Rams, beat the Raiders, I think we play the Patriots maybe after the Packers, but
it's before Packers. So it's Raiders, then Patriots, then Packers on Thursday, and the Jets the following week in Miami. So it'll be interesting.
I think that's a really important 4-game stretch. Now to make us we're 2-6 now. That'll be 6-6. And then you maybe you go 9-8. You could sneak in. You never know. But we've got to literally pretty much go now. Rest of the season, you got to go 8-1 pretty much now. Rest of the year, we'll lose one game and win the rest. It's incredibly tough. But you just never know. You just never know. But that is the end of our predictions. We've gone for all but one game, the same winners. We've both gone for wins for the Ravens, Bears, Bills, Chiefs, Falcons, Niners, Commanders. Vikings, Chargers, Eagles, Cardinals, Lions, and Rams. Whereas the one game we got differently is the one in Germany. I've gone for win for the Giants over the Panthers, whereas Shane has gone for the Panthers. So very similar predictions, but we'll find out who wins the most games in a week's time. But before we go, Shane, first of all, huge thank you for coming on and making your show debut.
Oh, I enjoyed it. And listen, I enjoyed hanging out with you. I'm a big fan of the content you put up. I was saying, by the way, you are fantastic at liking other people's stuff on TikTok. Whenever I put up anything on the show, TikTok or mine, you're always one of the first to like it. I'm like, this is the supportive energy we need right now from people who are covering the NFL in Europe. And I'm not going to the game in Germany this week. I think you are. Am I right in saying you are?
Yeah.
Well, so enjoy it. I'll miss you there. Unfortunately, I have something else come up. It's going to be a pretty good spectacle. And thanks for having me on. I'll happily come on any time to preview games or have a rant about Gerard Mayo or anything else that's going on in the league. And I really enjoyed it.
Great stuff. And for those who are listening who haven't come across your work yet, Shane, how can they find you and how can they find your podcast?
Yeah, the easiest way, if you want to follow me, the easiest way, if you go on Twitter at ShaneBrennan21, you'll see some of the stuff I write for the newspaper in Ireland, but also some stuff I do for the Irish NFL show. And if you search Irish NFL show, you'll see our podcast. Not just me, there's a group of us. We do previews and reviews, and we have guests on who cover certain teams. And I know it's Irish, but it is definitely inclusive. You can listen to it from the States or the UK. So you have a lot of people. So if you guys want to have if people want to have an extra part of their NFL diet, we are here for you. And please, we're always open to people getting in contact and let us know if you're listening in or have any requests for things for us to cover. So if people want to listen in and say hello, we're more than happy to. We had you on talking about the Dolphins earlier on this year, and I thought that was a very nice preview. I got a nice reaction from there's a lot of Miami fans based in Dublin as well. So we're here, Irish NFL show. Please get in touch if you like listening.
Those of you yet, do give them a follow if you haven't already. But in the meantime, this has been our Across the Pod NFL podcast Week 10 preview with, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today, Shane Brennan, and we'll see you guys for our next episode. Take care.